Welcome, Bernie. Thanks for tuning in this morning. We're at 103.9 FM Bernie Radio. This is Jeff Flynn, managing editor at the Bernie Star newspaper. We've got a couple of people here we've got in with us today. We're going to go digging. Archaeological dig, okay? We got from the Hill Country Archaeological Association. We got Kelly Skovberg here. She's the president, and I've got Richard Tomlinson here. He's a board member. Hey, folks, welcome in. First thing I think of when I think of archaeological dig, I think of Indiana Jones. That's the first thing I think of. But then I think when I was a kid, you'd go to some little attraction thing like SeaWorld or Fiesta, Texas, and you pay money and you get a broom and you get to push the sand off a little dinosaur bone. Yeah. That was the introduction when you're 8 years old to archaeological digs. Kelly, tell us about a real archaeological dig.
So that's paleontology. That's the dinosaur part of it.
Right.
That's totally a different wing of science. But
those darn dinosaurs.
But it's really what most kids are interested in, obviously. But archaeology is really just the study of old things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's nothing more than that. We, in fact, are in a dig outside of Ingram. We're in Hunt right now, and we've been doing a dig there since 2018. And it's a multi-component site. And what that means is that we've dated it back to more than 10,000 years ago.
Whoa. That
there were people using the land there. They weren't occupying it. They were hunters and gatherers, but they were actually using it, and we've actually determined that site goes all the way up to the historic site. So there's a homestead site there as well. So that's what I mean when I say multi-component. And we've been able to find some things that are kind of unusual in this area. There's a point called the St. Mary's Hall point. Richard, how many of those have we found?
Richard Tomlinson.
At least a dozen of them, yeah, and more.
Yeah, at least a dozen, yeah.
When you say find a site, describe a site.
So this is on the North Fork of the Guadalupe River. And it is sort of what they call a terrace site. And it basically has this wonderful terrace, and it has access to the Guadalupe River. And I think it used to be an orchard of some sort, pecan orchard, fairly recently. But this site it's only a few acres because it has access to water, and because it is just an area where you can find limestone, which we call chert, to actually craft the tools. Then it's just an amazing place for people to have lived.
This site is almost ideal for these people because, they were nomadic family group size, 20, 25 people. They didn't have the food source there were no tribes. These were Paleo-Indians. They were cavemen. And the reason it was occupied for many years is that it's sort of guarded by a high cliff that curves around the site. There's flint, chert in the rock face for making tools. It's right there by the river. Of course, they always camped along. All the stuff you find in the Guadalupe River is up and down the river. That was their highway and their source of food. And it had freshwater springs, which we recently found. The flood reactivated one of the springs.
Really?
And flooded one of our sites. So.
Does that help?
Does that help? Not really. It doesn't really help, no. Because you have a hard time getting the water to actually stay out. It just keeps coming.
Our excavations are high enough that we weren't flooded in the big flood. The river didn't come up there, but we were flooded from the rainwater coming down off the highlands and absolutely filled all our excavations.
So you roll out there and you got a swimming pool instead of an excavation site.
Pretty much, yeah.
And we pumped them out, but when we pumped out the one with the spring, we pumped and pumped. It kept refilling, so we're going to have to engineer something.
Now, you've got the Paleo-Indians there 10,000 years ago. Of course, the water, just like when America sprouted up.
Right.
If there's a river, that's where all the growth happened. What other things are they looking for? Of course, they're looking for wildlife, for food. Are they looking for grasses to build shelters? Are they looking for something to make pottery out of? What have you found that they have found?
Well, there was an amazing amount of trade going on. And one of the things that the river gave them was access to trade goods. And Kelly, the obsidian piece, tell me about that.
I think it was Idaho. We found a piece of obsidian, and they were able to find the exact place where that came from.
Chemically traced.
In Idaho.
Really?
Yes. Wow. So there's lots of trading going on because we're also going back to the Archaic, right, which is newer than Paleo-Indian. Those people were doing slightly different things. but they were trading a lot because I think it was probably more prevalent then that they were trading in that time period, which is 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, is the Archaic Period.
You're wrong. It was 4,224 years now.
No, I know. Well, and it's a range, and since Richard and I are what are called avocational archaeologists, we don't have the training and the education, of a professional archaeologist. So
we just like to play in the dirt.
we just love to play in the dirt. Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Now, when you go like that, is there a good chance there's going to be a trained archaeologist there? Is it just sight for you guys, or is there a leader of the pack?
We have a leader who is really well versed. He's not particularly credentialed, but he absolutely, in my view, is a professional.
Yeah,
and,
he's called the principal investigator.
One thing I wanted to make sure we didn't pass over is that Kelly told you that archaeology goes from prehistoric to historic. So we don't just dig up arrowheads. Hill Country Archaeological Association was called on by the Kendall County Historic Commission to do a survey of a cemetery here in Boerne, the Wren Cemetery.
Wren, yeah, okay.
And the reason they needed that survey was to qualify the site for a historic marker with the state, which we did. So
when you go into something like the Wren Cemetery, which is polar opposite of going down and looking at the Paleo-Indians
Right.
10,000 years ago, how does that alter what your mindset is when you walk in?
we're always trying to look at material remains of previous human activity and trying to understand what those people were doing. I think an important distinction between what we do and what people commonly think of about archaeology is we're not collectors of arrowheads. By the way, they're not arrowheads for the most part, because the bow and arrow was only here for about 1,000 years, and we're talking 10 or maybe 20,000 years. There was human activity up and down the Guadalupe, and those people did not have a bow and arrow. Their major weapon was called an atlatl. Did I say it, Larry?
Atlatl.
Oh, yeah, to take a
Curved stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they could kill a deer at 40 yards with that, which was okay. So,
And they were killing, at a certain point, they were killing megafauna.
yeah.
They were killing very large animals.
Right, yeah, with
points that are just beautifully crafted and flint.
The theory was that when the glacier started, the big North American glacier started melting 13,000 years ago, the land bridge to Asia opened, and the people who were hunting the mammoths followed the herds down into America. Now, recently, there's a lot of evidence that there were people here more than 13,000 years ago. There were people here 20,000, maybe even 25,000 years ago.
And they still serve in the House of Representatives today.
I didn't think this was a political show.
That's the first political word I've said in 2.5 years.
But obviously, they had to come down by water in small boats along the coast, and there weren't many of them, which is why we haven't found a lot of their stuff.
I'm Jeff Flynn. I'm the managing editor at the Boerne Star. Thanks for tuning in to Boerne Brew. We've got a couple of folks coming out for archaeological digs on the left side and the right side. We're talking Paleo-Indians 10,000 years ago, following how they lived and how they prospered. And we're talking about the Wren Cemetery, which was archaeological dig for you guys for accreditation purposes.
For doing a historic marker from the state.
And I don't think we did any digging there.
We didn't do any digging.
It's what we call survey.
We did a survey.
And we have in Texas, the Texas Historical Commission, which is overseeing archaeological sites. It basically has a steward program. So people who are interested in archaeology become stewards. And so when someone reaches out to us through our website or whatever, or Facebook, we'll contact them about going out to their property to survey it, to see what possible material remains might be on that site.
Think of these 7-generation, 8-generation families and people who are curious about who had that land before they were there.
Yeah.
Right. And they will just find material remains on top of the ground and think, well, what could this possibly be? So it's great that they're contacting us, and we want to make sure that people understand that Texas obviously is a private landowner state, and most of the land is private. But people have a misconception about what archaeologists do when they go to a piece of land. we're there basically to give you historic, specific information about what could possibly have been happening on your property. We wouldn't keep the artifacts. We wouldn't.
Yeah. Everything.
We try to keep it very anonymous. We won't tell people exactly where we are digging until we know that, in fact, they really have an interest in wanting to come and participate in the site.
And the lithics we find go back to this landowner when we're done. Mm-hmm. Once we've photographed and cataloged the material, we're not collectors.
It belongs to the people who own that property.
Right.
What we are doing is we're analyzing the artifacts in the lab. We call it curation, and we're also writing reports on that.
Yeah, because you might find a certain specific blend or rift of pottery, and then you do a site 45 miles away, and that same pottery shows up. All of a sudden, you've got a pattern.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly.
And also, you're going to find things near each other, bones, lithics. One of the things Kelly mentioned, the St. Mary's Hall points, we found one of those in conjunction with a buffalo bone, which we were able to radiocarbon date. And I think Kelly had dated it 9,000 years. And we were really happy because we had been dating the site based on the type of tools, the design of the tools. The tools changed over the years, so the archaeologists can date when a site was active by the design of the tools. And so they were
bones made a lot of early tools, right?
Yes.
Early man used the bones he found as tools until he learned to sharpen and be better at it.
They used everything.
Hey folks, I'm Jeff Flynn at Boerne Star. My guest today, I've got Kelly Skovberg here from the Hill Country Archaeological Association president. I've got Richard Tomlinson here. He's a board member with the HCAA. We're talking about some of the sites they're working on currently. One down on the Guadalupe, down near Hunt, correct? Down in Hunt area, and they've done the Wren Cemetery. You walk through an older cemetery, you'll see Richard Tomlinson here in your date, and here's Kelly Skovberg, and then you'll see one that says Rick, 1874. Do you guys delve into that and find out who that is and finish that?
We aren't really genealogists. I'm a genealogist.
There you go.
It's
two hats. I knew it.
Yeah, it's two hats.
Richard has a million hats.
So, yeah, the genealogist would do that. The archaeologists would not do that.
Okay. Kelly, why did you get into archaeology? Has it always been something you're fascinated with, or did you decide one day you're digging your backyard and you turned up something you said,
No. It's been a lifelong passion.
Has it?
Yeah. I've always been interested in archaeology, and it started out just by digging in the dirt. My dad called me Mud Hen. I was in the dirt all the time. And I was trying to find things and figure out what they were. And so it's been a lifelong passion. And then when I was about to retire, I was on a committee with Richard, and he mentioned that he couldn't meet on a certain day because he went to a dig. And I said, I need to talk to this guy. And so that's how I got connected with it.
I need to miss that meeting too.
Yeah, exactly.
Richard, what about you? What spurred you on? You're a genealogist, you're an archaeologist, you're all these ists. What was it?
Well, like Kelly, I always liked to play in the dirt. But the real answer is, I always found it fascinating if you have a stone tool, a scraper, a hammer, an awl, any of those things, and you hold it in your hand and you think, this was very important in their life. This wasn't a toy.
I lived in Carlsbad, New Mexico for 11 years, and Carlsbad Caverns are unique. There's a place called Lechuguilla Cave, which is one of the longest underground caves. Those are fine, but it's as you make this, if you've ever been to the Carlsbad Caverns, you make this winding road about 8 miles up, going 20 miles an hour behind 2 or 3 family vans. But off to the side, there's these cliffs, and you go over there, and you actually see hieroglyphic. You see drawings. You see hieroglyphic. You can see the blackened cave from when there was somebody in there roasting food or setting fire or keeping warm or doing something. You think, I'm here with my tennis shoes and my cargo shorts and my T-shirt. Somebody was here with a loincloth.
And you think, I really would like to know more about their life.
Yeah.
How did they live? What did they do?
But then you look around, like you said, the Paleo-Indians picked that site maybe because there was a cliff, which offers protection. It offers, that kind of thing. And you're thinking, you look around, you think, I see why they were here. Because you go over here and there's this drop off, or you over here and there's a stream. There's that kind of thing. You start putting one and one together to make things.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, our current excavation, major feature is called an earth oven. And maybe Kelly can explain what an earth oven is.
Earth oven, yeah.
I don't know if I can adequately explain it, but it's basically something that you dig out. Basically, you dig pretty far into the ground and you start putting rocks on top, and you put food things. So mostly vegetable matter, so tall, maybe some lechkia, that kind of thing. And you just layer it and layer it and layer it, and you let it burn for quite a while, so they get some of the nutrition from the vegetable.
Yeah, the DNA shows
the plant
that
matter.
A lot of their diet was vegetarian.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a process. I've actually seen somebody build an earth oven, and it's very much a process, and it was terrible tasting.
Yeah, they had
personally
one.
Think it was so bad, but
Well, it also has some implications about their organization, because these small family groups of 20 or 25 people might have had a hard time building an earth oven, and they may have gotten together with another group.
A communal.
And we know that they communicated because we know they had trade. And we also know that when there was a new feature for a stone tool, a lithic, it quickly spread.
Right.
So they were talking to each other. So they were not, although they were isolated family groups, they did have interaction with each other.
Yes or no? Would they be considered nomadic?
yes,
Yeah. They didn't really build permanent structures.
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't an agricultural type of thing.
And would they stay like for a season, or maybe 3 or 4 seasons, or would they stay until they harvested everything and get out?
They probably moved with the food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It wasn't until they had, a stable food source that you had tribes form. So they weren't, people always say, well, what tribe?
Right.
There wasn't any tribe.
Back then, when families, when they moved, did they stay along the river, or did they go river to river? Or, if you're on the river and you got a certain supply of food, all of a sudden you think, if we go inland 20 miles, maybe there's a wheat harvest. I mean, they're not thinking wheat harvest, but there's a grasses.
I don't know. I think they stayed close to the river. I mean, the river was a source of food. It was a highway, how they got from place to place.
Drinking water, washing.
Yeah.
Kelly, you've been on this dig since
I think
2018?
it's 2018.
When you first get there, and you've got, a flag in the ground, or you get there and somebody shows that they found this little hole, and how do you get started?
In this
Describe it to
particular
us.
case, there's something called a burn rock midden, and a midden is basically a trash dump. So it's a historic and prehistoric trash dump, and they had seen a mound when they surveyed. So the mound was the first thing, and you saw what they call fire-cracked limestone rock, sort of thrown out of that midden. So it just built up and up and up and up. So they were using it for many, many years. So that was the first thing that was seen by the people who went to survey that property. And I've only been there for a year or so now. So Richard has more information, because I think he came right after
I
they
came
started.
2018. But
yeah, that was the first thing that they saw, and then they could survey the land like you were talking about. They could see this terrace and this cliff and the access to the water and how the water might have flowed 10,000 years ago, and that's how they figured out, this is definitely something we want to look into. So they looked into the things that were nearer in history, and then it just kept going.
Archaeologists, do you guys excavate? Do you uncover, or do you discover? All three?
I think you'd say all three. We excavate and we discover.
yeah,
For sure.
when we're doing an excavation, it's done by hand, and our big excavations were down more than 6 feet deep, and it's all been hand dug and screened. So we screen the dirt as we go and catalog all the items that we find, so that later on you can write a story about what you learned about the people who were here.
Yeah.
And as you know, the dirt is not forgiving in this part of the world.
Yeah.
So it's a little challenging.
When you talked about digging an earth oven, I'm thinking, man, digging an earth oven here?
know,
Holy
yeah.
moly.
I ought to say that site that we're on, it had been what we call looted. People who just pick up arrowheads, in our view, are looters, because as soon as they pick it up, all the scientific value
goes away.
Is gone. You don't know the context. You don't know the other things that were, around it. It's just a rock.
Right.
So when people come in and just pick things up, obviously they're curious and they do, but they really shouldn't do that.
You talked about if people find something on their property, they're out Sisterdale, they're out of Candelia.
Right.
People, if you got a pen and paper and you're interested in having these folks come out and look at something, if you found something in your yard, in your property, on your back 40 or back 90 or whatever you have, and you want to find out more about it or find out what it is, these people could tell you. Who do they contact and how do they do that?
So what people need to do is just go to hcarchaeology.org, and we're an organization that doesn't have the extra A in the middle of archaeology. It's just ARCHEOLOGY.
Okay.
hcarchaeology.org, and they can also just send an email to connect@hcarchaeology.org.
Connect at
hcarchaeology.org.
Okay.
And that will get to us, and we'll be able to farm that out to whomever needs to see it.
Yeah.
We get quite a few people who will send points, or some sort of
send a picture and say, hey, I found this. What is it?
Say, what do you think it is? And they give us the information about where they found it, and we can usually determine what it is.
If you don't remember the address, Google it.
What's the most unique thing, Kelly, you have found in a dig, either Guadalupe or wherever, anything you've been digging?
Since I've been digging.
What's an interesting thing you found, either interesting for you or you found out, you turned it in, it was worth millions?
No, nothing like that. We have a guy on our site who actually we just say we dig dirt for him because he finds everything. He just finds it. He has this amazing eye for it. But one day, the first thing I ever found that I got really excited about was a scraper. So it's a scraper that you would just sort of hold in your palm, and maybe you would scrape an animal hide with it. And that's what's so cool, I think, is that when they couldn't use something, maybe they didn't do the technology correctly and they couldn't use it for a point to kill an animal, they would turn it into something else. So it'd be a multi-use tool. So you find a lot of those things, and they can do multiple things, and they're extremely sharp.
Richard, how about you? What's something you have found that you either treasured or you turned it in and thought, I should have kept that?
I found an almost perfect St. Mary's Hall point, and it was exciting. It was a patinated piece of chert that had been formed into a point. And
it's funny because I took my daughter to a BTS concert in El Paso.
I'm sorry.
Well, I drove because I wouldn't let her drive. Her sense of direction would have her in Juarez in no time. So I drove and let them have their concert. But during the day, we went to the El Paso Archaeology Museum.
Yeah.
That was interesting. You mentioned the Zattel. That's where I learned about that. You think of all the hills and the area back there in El Paso and the transit. That was probably a transit center for people going into Mexico. And you looked at all the historical pieces they have there, and it's a piece of this, a piece of that, and you're thinking, somebody found that.
Jeff, I want to be sure that people understood that they can join this organization. You don't have to have any credentials. There's no test.
If you like to play in the dirt, folks.
If you like to play in the dirt, join us on the dig. We'll show you how to use a digging tool.
I'd love to do that, get down in the dirt, but I wouldn't be able to get back up. You'd have to send a crew to get me back up.
I also want to point out that we're in 7 counties, so it's not just Kendall, or Kerr. It's also Kimball, Gillespie, Bandera, Real, and Edwards.
Oh, wow,
so if anyone
that's pretty vast.
From those counties has anything they want us to look at, or if they have a site that they would like for us to, actually do some longer term work on, then we'd love to hear about it. The other thing that we have going on right now is that we're working with the Cibolo Center for Conservation, and they're going to provide us a permanent lab space.
Really?
Because right
That's
now we
cool.
don't have a permanent lab space, but at Sisterdale Sanctuary, they have a building there. And so we're working with them to do that. And what's great about that is that people will be able to see, anybody who visits that area or any of the Cibolo, property that we can get access to, we can show them that it's not just historical information, right? We can go further back than that.
How extensively has that area been archaeologized?
Has it been surveyed?
Making up words as we go.
I don't think very much, and that would apply to the original, properties as well.
That's
for the Cibolo. So that's an opportunity for us to go in there and survey, but also to do public outreach, because that's a very big part of what we do.
Yeah.
We want people to understand what archaeology is and what it isn't.
Right.
Exactly.
And outreach to especially kids, to get them really interested in it and to understand that it really is a scientific endeavor.
We're really excited about setting up our lab on the Sisterdale property with the Conservancy, because it'll give us access. People could come to a lab session and we'll show them hands-on what it is you do, because a lot of stuff comes out of the ground, but now the work begins.
Right, time to work.
You have to wash it, you have to identify it, you have to
photograph it, measure it.
Yeah. And,
all those things you would do in a scientific
and
lab.
archive it.
But all it takes is for one kid to look at a point that's fully formed and to think, oh my gosh.
Yep.
Like me, and go, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, and want to keep doing it.
This thing right here, it's been in the ground longer than Richard's been in the dirt. Hey guys, thanks for coming in. Kelly Skovberg Richard Tomlinson from the Hill Country Archaeological Association. Folks, you find stuff on your property, give them a call, let them come out and see if it's something. You find a little thing on the surface, there could be tons of stuff below the surface that you don't even know about. And you don't want to throw away history. So, hey guys, thanks for coming in. It's the weekend. Have fun out there. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week. Listen to Kerry Barboza. He's got some sports people headed our way. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.